I watched wrestling as a kid, as most boys do, I think, right? From 13 to 15 years old, I was hooked. The Rock, Stone Cold, Undertaker, Triple H, that the Attitude Era back then when I was a teenager, it was must-see TV for me. It's been about 20 years since I've watched a wrestling match, at least with the WWE. We were partners with the AEW back in the day, so that was a little bit different. But for the first time in 20 years, I said two things. Two things changed with my personal consumer behavior, which I think a lot of people in my seat would agree with. I watched more women's basketball games during March Madness than I did men's games. And I flipped on WrestleMania for the first time in 20 years. Why did those two things happen? Number one, on the women's side, I made this point as well. It's, we kind of lose the story or the investment of players on the men's game because of the one and dones, right? They play 1 year, they're out. A lot of the NBA now is international, so you don't really get to see them play like a Luka, like a Joker. They're amazing, they're incredible, and they're making the NBA great. But you don't get invested as a United States sports watcher in those guys. But we get invested in Angel Reese, we get invested in Caitlin Clark, we're getting invested in Juju Watkins. And when they're playing 3 years at the college level, you can follow them and you can know their name and it can be must-see TV, where even the big programs like Kentucky or Duke, I mean, they're just running through players so much you can't even really find a favorite player that you want to follow like back in the day. So the fact that I watch more women's game than men's game, I think is not just me. I mean, they got more viewers, 18.7 million viewers versus, I believe, 14 million viewers for the men's. First time the women's title game has outpaced the men's title game in the history of college basketball. That's a big deal. So we know women's sports is doing great. We know women's basketball seems to be more must-see TV than the men's side, at least on the college level. And we'll see what happens when Caitlin goes to the Indiana Fever and how that affects WNBA ratings. By the way, already Indiana Fever games in the different markets like New York Liberty or LA Sparks or whatever it's like 5 times the ticket price than the other games. So you could tell already there's going to be some Caitlin mania happening. So that's one thing, but I did want to point on the WrestleMania part. Why did David Brickley, after 20 years, flip on the main event of WrestleMania, not on Saturday and on Sunday? Because it was a two-parter. And the reason that was, I can say for me, is the TikTok algorithm. I liked a Rock post. I watched the full video of The Rock and he's coming back, and I just got sucked in for 6 weeks on this storyline. And those of you that don't know, I won't bore you with all the details, but essentially, The Rock came back to WWE and he took the place of somebody, Cody Rhodes, who deserved the title shot against Roman Reigns. And the WWE crowd, the consumer, that's why I made that transition, the consumer hated that. I mean, The Rock, as I'm sure you saw this too, Kayla, The Rock on social media got killed. When he announced that he would be in the main event, all the comments said, you're terrible, and why'd you come back, and poor Cody Rhodes, and why'd you take his place, and who the hell are you, and you can't just do movies and come back whenever you want. It was bad. I mean, the consumer said, this is BS. And kudos to the WWE and The Rock, because they said, okay, let's listen to the consumer. The Rock became the bad guy. He embraced the villain. They allowed Cody Rhodes to keep his title shot. And it was just this 6-week lead up where The Rock was able to play the villain and the bad guy. And it was must-see TV, if you will. And it really was an incredible storyline. And again, with Vince McMahon exiting the WWE for all those unfortunate reasons, and Triple H now being the chief content officer, they listened to the fans. And then at WrestleMania, John Cena came back. The Undertaker came back. It was just incredible cinema. And it was the number one WrestleMania of all time. They sold, I think, 145,000 tickets over the 2 days. It was the most socially viewed WrestleMania of all time. Sold more than 90,000 tickets. Standing room only, 145,000 fans over 2 days. They filled the freaking Eagles Lincoln Financial Outdoor Stadium. But so interesting, right? Where again, I think when you see the Manning cast and you see different views of sports, and I just feel like there's this new sense of we're listening to the consumer more. Something as big as an entity as TKO and WWE, they're able to change storylines in real time to make sure the consumer is happy. I'm just noticing a shift And what a brilliant shift by the WWE, but a shift in the media landscape in general, where it's like, oh, you guys really love player-focused podcasts? Let's lean into that. Oh, you guys aren't using a Spotify for your search bar. Let's lean into that. It's just very interesting how fast this stuff is moving. But kudos to the WWE because they got me. I know they got a lot of other people like me. And I will say the power of TikTok, once you kind of get sucked into that algorithm, like, oh, David liked a couple of these WWE videos. We're going to keep on feeding him this storyline. I'm like, all right, I'm hooked. I got to watch this thing now. Yeah, I think TikTok in particular, with how good the algorithm is able to push you things that, in a good way for the WWE, allowed me, a 20 plus year sideline wrestling fan, to get back in the game.